to In the News for the new year. Happy New Year. This is January the 2nd, 2026. I am Brett Burney from Apps and Law. Happy New Year, Jeff.
And I am Jeff Richardson from iPhone JD. Happy New Year, Brett. Good to see you. Happy holidays. Hope they were good.
Crazy. Everything went great. In fact, right now in Ohio, I have snow falling outside, like the big floofy snow, which is always like pretty. You know, there's like the freezing rain kind that's drizzly and annoying. This looks pretty, although it is still annoying when you have to blow it and shovel it off of your sidewalk and stuff. But hey, I still feel like we're right in the middle of the holidays, and I am
also
thrilled.
Saw white for the holidays too.
What?
Because we
in
were
New
on
Orleans?
we were in the white sandy beaches of Gulf Shores, Alabama. So not quite the same as snow, but I did have to put a sweatshirt on. I will tell you, it was that cold that I had to put a sweatshirt on. So
I feel for you so much, Jeff. Goodness gracious. Well, it is that time of the year, as in the very beginning of 2026. And you start off, I think appropriately so, of your blog post today with a whole bunch of predictions, rumors, what's going to happen with Apple this year. I love this little headline from Jason Snell. From the iPhone Fold to a touchscreen Mac, Apple's 2026 is going to be epic. Wow,
yeah,
that's a pretty high standard.
I always enjoy the beginning of the new year. We sort of look forward to everything that could happen because it's all possibilities, right? And you know, a certain degree of this is rumors, which I'm not a huge rumor person, but a certain degree is predictions based upon what we know. I mean, we know, for example, Apple comes out with a new iPhone every fall, so we know that's going to happen. But then the question is, will it be something different? And the rumor, of course, and the one that's in the headline you're showing here is a folding version of an iPhone, something that would be like a book. You would fold it up and it'd be more or less the size of a traditional iPhone, maybe a little skinnier, and then you'd open it up and it would be closer to the size of a small iPad mini. And you know, there's been rumors of this for so long, and when there's smoke, there's often fire. I have to assume that Apple is certainly working on this. Now, just because they're working on it doesn't mean it's going to come out this fall. I mean, who knows? But that certainly seems to be the rumor. I mean, we should say at the very beginning here, the article from Jason Snell that you mentioned, he mentioned that 1 year ago, he and every other pundit, and I suspect if we turn back the time machine, Brett, you and I, a year ago show, you know, everybody was predicting that AI would be a huge year. 2025 would be a huge year for Apple for AI. And of course it was. I mean, you couldn't ignore AI in the year 2025, but Apple did not do the AI things that they had originally promised to do. And in fact, in March of the year, they actually came out and said, things are slow. It's going to be another year. And so, you know, notwithstanding predictions, just because maybe people really do think it's going to happen, including Apple itself, things change. And so things could change with this folding iPhone, but that would be something interesting to have a brand new form factor like that. And just to stay on that one topic for a second, one of the things that I linked to was MG Siegler or Spyglass, MG, who's been, you know, a pundit for a very long time. And, you know, his prediction, and again, who knows, but many times when Apple comes out with a new product, it's that the first generation creates buzz, but that's often not the big hit. You know, the original Apple Watch was a real game changer, and yet very few people got it, and it was incredibly slow and blah blah, but it started the thing. And the first iPhone too, I didn't even have the very first iPhone, very few people did, it was expensive, blah blah blah, but it started the new things. And so when if there's a new folding iPhone, is it going to be the sort of thing like, wow, this could be something good, but it's going to take a few years to mature? You know, MG is suggesting that, you know, based upon, you know, what he thinks, based upon how these things have taken off in the Android market where they have them, but they've got problems. And the hope is that Apple has actually solved some of that, like fixing the crease that occurs when you open up the screen. You know, he just throws it out there to say that maybe this one actually will be a hit from day one. We shall see. It's very interesting. I mean, I love the iPhone so much. It's such a big part of my life and my law practice and everything else, that if there was something new, that would be exciting. Having said that, I don't know if I would get it. It sort of depends upon what the features are. If I had to choose between, you know, compromises on the camera and stuff like that versus a folding iPhone, I don't know. We talked about this a few weeks ago when I said I'd been using an iPad mini. It made me sort of think about a folding iPhone. So I think that this will, if it happens, it will probably be one of the big stories of the year. But before I go to the other ones, any thoughts from you on that before I move on?
Just I feel like this foldable iPhone has gotten such a discussion ramp for longer than I think many other Apple products that I can remember. I mean, I know we talked about the Apple Watch before, we talked about the iPad coming up, but I don't know if anything has been as significant as like a phone that everybody has a phone. I feel like we've been talking about this or thinking about this for much, much longer than some of the other devices. And maybe that's where, because I read this from MG Siegler as well. Maybe that's where he's coming from this. He thinks that out of the gate, this could be a hit as opposed to, some of the other things, like you said, the original iPhone ramping up, the original watch ramping up. It ain't going to be a cheap hit. Everybody's been predicting at least $2,000 price tag.
Yeah.
And that does not surprise me at all, even though some people might just, drop their jaw on the floor by thinking about that. But I mean, most people don't realize like your phone today are $1,100, $1,200, $1,400. It's just that we pay every month for 2 years. And so that kind of spreads the price out a little bit on some of that. Most people do, at least. But I mean, I think that's just going to be a punch in the face for a lot of people. And, that could be similar to the Apple Vision Pro, right? In the sense that we talked about the Apple Vision Pro for a long time, but I don't know that we kind of had as much of an idea of what it was going to be like. I feel like for this iPhone Fold, there's going to be some surprises that come with this. But for the most part, I feel like we kind of know what this is going to look like. Apple is just doing some kind of magical miracle, closing off scientists that have no access to the outside world at all. And they've been working on this for 3 years, and possibly that could happen, I guess. But that just very, very interesting. I mean, that's the top of the list of all of these lists that you gave today, that it's going to be the iPhone Fold.
I'll say one more thing about the Fold. Apple historically is incredibly good at hardware. And on software, like the AI thing we were just talking about, that's where it's sometimes, sometimes overall they're great. That's what makes Apple products so wonderful, is the interface. But sometimes it takes some time to get there. And the thing that could be promising about the Fold is what makes it difficult is the hardware, the unfolding, the screen, you don't want to crease, all this sort of stuff. And so if Apple is incredibly good at the hardware part of it, the software part, in a way, is already done, right? Because for many years now, it used to be way back when the iPads only came in one size, and then Apple had their developers say, oh, no, you have to be able to have your apps that they can be any size, so you could have different size iPads. We now have a very robust system that apps on an iPad can be any size, right? Especially the new iOS 26.
Great point.
And so, that feature of a new screen size, that's done. That's in the can. We already have that technology. And so much of what would make the software work, Apple already has, because the iPad, that's something that we don't have on the Android sides, because although Android phones are popular, the Android tablets are not. And it struggles. And many of the reviews of those folding Android phones will say just that it seems like a hack when you have the bigger screen on it. And so the pieces are there for Apple to do this really well. It'll be fascinating. So I hope it comes out this fall, because I think it'll be fascinating to see whether I get one or not. Other stories coming in 2026. I don't have much to say, but I do think it will be a big story in the news. All signs seem to say that there's going to be some changes on the executives. We've talked about this. Tim Cook will probably, from the rumors, retire, maybe not completely from Apple. He'll probably move into a chairman of the board role solely. And then if that changes, there will probably be other changes in upper management as well. And I think that's all fine. I think if that happens, we'll see new leadership. I don't think it will change the day-to-day stuff that we do on Apple, certainly not in the short term with Apple technology, but it will have an effect in the long term. I'm personally more interested, although this is not revolutionary, in what Apple has planned for a home product, because this is a rumor that you and I did talk about a year ago, because the rumors were that in 2025, Apple was going to have some hardware device for your home, and the easiest way to think of it was like a home pod with a screen. And Amazon has certainly made versions of its Echo products that do that in the past. And we can all envision what the product would look like. What would it be used for? How would it be useful? I don't know, but I really would love to see some action. I love the HomeKit, and now we have Matter. I love Apple products in the home so much. A new device would be interesting. A related rumor is that we might get a new Apple TV as well, which is interesting because the current Apple TV hardware device certainly works fine, but maybe there'd be some interesting new features. So I hope that Apple does do this. One of the rumors was that the hardware was actually done last year, but Apple wanted it to really use AI, and because AI wasn't there yet for Apple, they had to put it off, which would be interesting. Does it mean that they're literally sitting in a warehouse somewhere, or is it just they
Yeah.
got very close to production and they stopped at the last minute? But that I think that would be really interesting if it does come out this year, and we'll see. And the latest rumors say spring, but again, I don't put too much credit in that because a year ago the rumors also said spring of 2025. So we'll see.
I'm always interested in those big updates for sure. Can't get away from
Mhm.
there. But I always also get curious about the little smaller things that might be updated. This is another article that you linked to at Tech Republic from Liz Tikong, that she's talking about an AirTag 2. Like we thought that
Mhm.
was going to be coming out right in this
Sure.
past fall of last year. We can say that now. Like the AirTags, I would almost go through and say, could we get another AirPods Pro? Although we just had that, and I'm loving my AirPods Pro 3
Mhm.
on there. That's been fantastic. iOS updates, maybe a new Apple TV, like things that we haven't seen for a while. I like those little tiny
Mhm.
updates that
Yeah.
could be, to me. I like those smaller things a lot of times as well. I mean, Jason even goes into some of the Mac updates, predictions on that, like a touchscreen Mac, which people have been clamoring about for decades now almost. That could be something that could be different change. I mean, that would be hardware as well as software on some of that. Updates to the home pods, for example, little things like that keep me a little curious as well.
I'll mention one last one, which is, and you mentioned it before, the Apple Vision Pro. I love my Apple Vision Pro so much. I was using it last night. I use it all the time. I really, really enjoy it. But I also know that so few of us have it. I mean, we talk about that first iPhone, so people having it. I mean, very, very few people have the Apple Vision Pro. If you do, you know what a fantastic device it is. And hopefully everybody has now had a chance to try it at some point. But I look forward to Apple pushing that platform forward. And one of the
Yeah,
rumors, and this has
right.
been a heavy rumor, is that because of the price and other reasons, and also because Ray-Ban and Amazon have had a hit. No, not Meta, excuse me.
Meta.
Meta,
Yep.
Meta Ray-Ban have had a hit with their version of the glass, of just, simple
Right.
glasses that are not nearly as sophisticated as an Apple Vision Pro, not even close. But the price is just a few $100s. And
And
so
people love them.
the and people love them. And so the rumor is that Apple has taken some of the Vision Pro team and said, let's keep the Vision Pro. I mean, we'll continue to develop that, but at the same
Right.
time, let's have something that's a Vision Pro Lite, or something that's just closer to a pair of glasses, maybe closer to a pair of glasses with AirPods inside of them.
Right.
But it's
Right.
not going to be showing you AR, VR worlds quite the same way.
Sure.
But it would just be interested to see what Apple can do with that. I mean, notwithstanding what I said before about Apple software sometimes being a problem, I will tell you one of the amazing things about the Vision Pro is that the software works so well. Apple has tweaked it since the product
Yeah.
first
Good
came out.
point.
Don't get me wrong, it's definitely better now than it was originally, but I'm impressed that it works as well as it did, because it's a completely new paradigm of interacting with things, because you're not literally touching anything like you would touch your finger to a screen of an iPhone or an iPad. Um, you don't really have mouses. I mean, it's a different interface using your
Yeah.
eyes. And so I would be fascinated to see. My guess is that if Apple did come out with this product, that it would be more expensive, but also far more sophisticated than what you can do with the Meta Ray Bans. But maybe that also means it would hit a price point that would be more attractive to people, 1,000 to 1,500 sort of thing. That would be really a really interesting product. I really do believe that in the long term, I mean, there is, I've worn glasses my entire life since I was probably 5 years old. I feel that, before I die, there will come a day when, enough regular person glasses will have the option of being smart glasses. Like, it will
Oh
not
yeah.
be something, and I'm
Inevitable.
not saying everybody's going to have it, just like not everybody has AirPods or iPhones or anything like that. But I do think this day is coming. And I think that Apple has all the pieces to be the company that does it. Now, I also think that the day that I'm talking about may well be 10, 15 years down the road. I mean, it's not going to come
Right.
right away, but you have to take the baby steps. You have to start if you're going to get to the middle and then get to the end. So this is something that I'm looking forward to. And I also think it's going to be fun because, I've seen, and you have too, these changes. I mean, the original, personal computers come out in the 1970s, and the Mac
Hmm.
comes out in the 1980s, and the iPad comes out, and the iPhone. We've seen, and the Palm, the Palm Pilot originally, we've seen these new products come out, and we've watched them change over a decade plus, in some case with new companies moving into the fields. In some cases, the original company stays in there. It's always sort of fun to see. And so that's what's exciting to me about Vision Pro is like, this is
Yeah.
another one. We're in the very beginning stages of it, but it's fun to watch a brand new platform evolve. So anyway, that will be an interesting thing for 2026, perhaps as well, but maybe not, maybe 2027, who knows?
2026 already becoming something to watch. And it's just the second day of the year. Now we've looked forward to what 2026 could bring. I like that you were very fair in your post today. Let's look back on 2025 with all the new products that Apple released in 2025. We could probably go through this pretty quick, but there was a few in here that I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. Apple did do a little bit more than I remembered.
One that I forget about is the iPhone 16e.
Right.
I'm sorry. Yes, the 16e. That's the name of it.
That's right.
Because it came out so early in the year in February.
February, right?
I like the idea of this. You know, these are the lower end phones where Apple typically will take, you know, new guts, but put it inside of an old form factor and make a very, very affordable iPhone. And I think about it now just because, you know, here we are at the beginning of the year. Will Apple come out with the 17e, or will they keep the 16e around for a couple of years? Because that's what Apple has traditionally done with this form factor is, you know, this lower end phone would come out and would be pretty good when it first came out, although very low end, and then it would stay for a couple of years. So so that was an interesting reminder to see that came out. And then of course another big one for this year was for me the iPhone Air, just because it is that brand new form factor that, you know, hasn't been selling like hotcakes, but for the people that have it, they really love it. And then it also gave Apple the opportunity to come up with a much thinner screen, which some people think was sort of the, you know, the precursor to this folding screen, which is going to have to be thinner so that you can fold it in half.
Right.
Anything else jump out at you this year? I love the iPhone 17
it was
Pro, but that's sort of incremental. Go ahead.
On some of the Mac stuff, you know, we don't cover Mac just a whole lot, but we had the new MacBook Air in March. That was just a basic, it's just been some basic refreshes, right? On some of those. I mean, it wasn't brand new, but I just got my new MacBook Pro M4. I want to say it was either March or April. So that wasn't like it was new. I think they had released that just at the very end of 2024. But, you know, again, it was just sort of an incremental upgrade. It's just I had an M1 and I knew that I wanted to make that leap. And so I did that. But they had the Mac Studio, which was another one that came out in March, the iPad and the iPad Air. And again, those are just sort of incremental. We're familiar with that every March. Typically, at least historically, in the last several years, Apple will release something in March of every year. So that was to be expected. And then we jumped to September of 2025, like you said, when the new iPhones came out, along with the new Apple Watches, right? And the AirPods Pro 3. I mean, again, those are all very significant. We didn't have a new AirPods Pro in 2024, correct? We had skipped that year, I believe, and then we came out in 2025. And so I know I was waiting on that for a long time.
You know, I don't think we have it linked in our show notes for today, but there was that article over the last 2 weeks from the New York Times that was talking about how somebody went to Japan and he was wearing the new AirPods Pro 3 and he was like on a tour, and the person is speaking in Japanese and he had a tour guide that was, you know, translating for English for him, but he was able to hear what the original person was saying in Japanese. Then he could say to the tour guide, well, did he just say XYZ? And the tour guide's like, I thought you didn't speak Japanese. He's like, yeah, but I got this AirPod in. And that feature
that's awesome.
that came out, it's just a really cool feature. It makes, when this feature came out a couple months ago, I like immediately wanted to go travel internationally so that I could try it out. And you look a little dorky because you're wearing your AirPods while you're talking to somebody, but you know, if people can get over that, or you sort of explain people this, the author of this article said he actually printed a business card that he could hand out to people in Tokyo that says, I'm trying out a new technology. I'm not being rude by having something in my ear, but I'm trying out a technology that can hear you. But yeah, so it just goes to show you, I mean, these are for some people, these are revolutionarily important people. I mean, you're letting people talk, you know, with that through different languages. That's just incredible. So that's really cool. I'll say one thing on the Macs too. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but my wife actually had a very old, talk about the flip side of today's announcement, which is the Macs that were discontinued. My wife had a very old MacBook Pro, which I'm sure was on the obsolete list or something like that. And she doesn't update computers very often. I think it was like 10 years old, but she got a new one when this new MacBook Pro M5 came out in October or November, whenever that was in October. And I was just helping her set up some stuff on it recently. And it's a nice computer. I tell you what, you know, I know this is nothing new, but the M processor processors, especially the M5 being the latest. The MacBooks. I mean, Apple, it is just a wonderful, nice
Oh yeah.
computer. If you are out there looking for a nice laptop, I don't use laptop computers myself. I'm more of an iPad person. But if you do use laptop computers, gosh, the MacBook Airs, the MacBook Pros, those are so nice.
Maybe your wife read this other article that you linked to, all the products that
Yeah.
Apple killed in 2025. You just alluded to this. But again, this is, as much as we talk about Apple, I think does probably one of the best jobs at continuing to support even older products. At some point, they have to draw the line and say, you know what? We want to give you the best. And it's like, we can't spend resources on continuing to support these out-of-date devices. And so none of this was a surprise to me in here. But if you have an item that's on the list, people always ask us, Jeff, should I upgrade? Like, should I get a new device? Should I turn this in? If you're on this list, the answer is probably yes at this
Yeah,
point.
because you're not even getting support. To use my wife as an example again, until this fall, she had been using one of the old iPhones. I think it was an old SE, but it had the button on it. And, Apple has not had the button on the phone in a long time. If you're listening to this and you're still using an iPhone with the button on it, and I understand there's some advantages of having that button right on the front, it is the traditional iPhone look from way back when in
Right.
2007, but like it's time to move on. Those are either vintage or obsolete. They're done. And so what my wife did, she's got a new iPhone 17, not the Pro, just like the regular old 17.
Right.
And
right.
it was such a huge jump forward in so many different ways. And so,
Good.
So if you do have one of these older, certainly if you're using an iPhone, what I see the Apple Watches Series 1 and Series 4 obsolete, and I forget which ones are vintage, but that's an Apple Watch is another good one because you absolutely positively do not need to get an Apple Watch every year when they come out with them.
Correct.
But
yes,
if you wait a couple of years, which might mean 4 years, right? 5 years, you will be surprised because when you make that jump, they really are better. I mean, I think when I made my jump to the Series 10, not in 2025, but in 2024, it was a nice jump forward. And, with the better processors, I mean, an Apple Watch is certainly not as fast as an iPhone or a
Right.
Macintosh computer, but they really can do a lot more. And when you wait a couple of years and you upgrade, you're like, oh, this is such a nicer experience. And so, so that's one that you might want to think about if you do have an older Apple Watch. And I can understand why you would, because you don't feel like you need to upgrade it that often.
Right.
But whenever you decide to go around and do it, there are some discounts. I just said Amazon's gotten 25% off. You can get pretty good deals on them. And, if it's been a few years, it's a nice upgrade. It really is.
I like how this list is broken down into obsolete, which means that there are no repairs available for this. And these are some of those you mentioned, the iPhone SE, the iPad Pro, second generation. I don't even know what year that was from, but I'm sure it's like 2021. I wanted to say, some of the MacBook Airs. The second section is the vintage, which means there are limited repairs on some of these. So you can look through those. Again, some other iPhones, some Apple Watches. And then at the end, the products that Apple discontinued in 2025, which basically means they just replaced it with newer models. And you can still get these. This is like the iPhone 16, for example. They're not making new iPhone 16s right now. They're making the iPhone 17s, right? And 17 Pro and everything, like the iPhone 15. So in other words, these are still available. In fact, you can get them from a variety of different places, even Amazon and Apple Refurbished. There's a lot of these old used iPhones probably that can be out there that are still great, by the way. I just got my mother one, I want to say maybe 4 months ago. It was off of Amazon. I think I got her an iPhone 14. She upgraded from an XS, which I don't even know where this was on. That might be vintage or obsolete. I don't know. But I upgraded her to an iPhone 14, got it off of Amazon. It was refurbished. They have a certified refurbished program at Amazon as well. It was unlocked, so I was able just to turn it on, and it was very easy to switch it over to her on that. So I just wanted to underscore, like you mentioned, you can get some of these older, not vintage, not obsolete products, but the discontinued devices. You can get some of those for a really good price if you kind of just make sure you're not, if it sounds like it's too good to be true, kind of a deal, it probably is kind of a thing. Just make sure that you go with somebody that can be trustworthy on some of that. And there's some discontinued Apple Watches and iPads on there as well. But I just thought that this is a great list. I like the way that it's organized here. If you got a gift card, Apple gift card for Christmas, this is a great article that you linked to today on MacRumors, what you can and can't use an Apple gift card for. Now, as soon as I saw this today, I remember what, 2 weeks ago, the last time I recorded in 2025, Jeff, we talked about that Apple gift card scam, right? That somebody got a gift card and he tried to put it in, and the amount it said this has already been used, and had been scammed. Really weird story, but happy ending at least a little bit there for the gentleman that was affected there. But I just want to let people know, like, if you went to apple.com or an physical Apple store and you got an Apple gift card, or maybe even got it off of Amazon, somewhere where it was a little bit more trustworthy. I mean, these can be great. These are a great way to take a little bit of the cost off of maybe getting a device. Or what I really like in this story from Hartley Charlton is that you can apply it to your Apple, either the App Store, like the App Store for an apps, or the Apple app, which basically is the Apple Store app, that you can apply it even if you wanted to do it digitally like that. But I like that when I used to get Apple gift cards, and I don't do it much anymore, I used to just kind of put it into my the App Store as sort of like that's the balance that I have, if you will, right? And then every time that I wanted to get a new app, for example, or buy it, it would just take it out of that balance, and I would just leave that stuck there and park there, and that way I didn't have to worry about actually using the card. I would just park the balance into the App Store.
Yeah, I mean, a very long time ago, when we were buying songs from the iTunes store instead of streaming, I remember that gift cards were fun because you could buy some songs for free. And then in the more recent past, I remember gift cards were fun for the reason that you said, that you could, get some free apps, maybe you like try out a game that you weren't going to spend money on, but try it anyway.
Right.
One of the things I linked to a story from Chance Miller at 9 to 5 Mac, and he had a good idea of using the Apple gift card as a way to try out some of Apple's services, because as you and I have talked about, the Apple services are they're so fantastic nowadays in so many ways. Apple TV alone, with all of its great TV shows, that, like, if you haven't done that yet, then this is a great way. If somebody gave you an Apple gift card, you could try a few months of, maybe try the Apple One service that has everything, or maybe just say, you know what, I'm just going to try Apple News or Apple TV or Fitness Plus or something like that. And it's I didn't even occur to me that that would be something that you could use it for. So there's lots of options. I mean, the reality is you can do a whole bunch with an Apple gift card. So it's a pretty good gift.
I think, again, for the services, if you put the balance of the gift card into your balance on your Apple account, I think every month it'll just take it out of that balance until it's done. Now, you usually have to have a credit card listed in there as well, and so once that credit is exhausted, it'll go and start charging the credit card on there. I think that's how it still works. I haven't done this in a long time, but I know that some people will do this if they can find a discount. It's very difficult to find a discount on an Apple gift card, and again, sometimes that can come in with some scams and everything, but you could just get that as a little bit of a discount, and then they add that even if it's a 5% discount. Or I would also say, we mentioned this a few weeks ago as well. I think it was back in November, I think, that Apple usually runs this promotion where if you buy an iPhone or a new Mac, they'll give you, I think, $150 Apple gift card or something like that to offset the cost. And now you can use that and apply it to this, so that it'll basically be taking it out of that credit every month, which is nice.
Yep.
We have talked about how we like articles from Glenn Fleischman at sixcolors.com. And this is another good one. How about using AirDrop? I don't run into AirDrop just a whole lot, Jeff, but every once in a while, when we're at a party or something and somebody wants to share either an article or a picture, usually, or video, I'm like, can you email, instead of saying, can you email that to me or even text it to me? We recognize we both have Apple iPhones, and they'll say, can you just AirDrop that to me? And frankly, that's about the only time that I use it. Although every once in a while, I can, I will use it to transfer something. Like if my daughter has a picture she wants to send and we're just sitting around, instead of doing a shared photo album, sometimes we'll use AirDrop. But I don't run into it all the time. But I liked this article from Glenn Fleischman today to just make sure that Apple is doing, I think, a good amount of things that they can do to make sure that it's kept secure.
I like AirDrop a lot because you often encounter someone, you want to share something, and, just to take a picture, for example, if you email or if you text a picture, sometimes it will reduce the quality, either you do know about it or you change it. But when you AirDrop, it sends like the original quality file, I'm pretty sure. And so it's a good way to get like the full quality of a picture. It's a great way to send a couple documents. It's just you're standing there, you're talking to each other. It's like, can you get this to me? Yes, I'll do it immediately right now. I know you have it. So I like AirDrop. AirDrop sort of has these two modes in which it operates in, and Glenn talks about this in the article. If the
Right.
person is in your contacts, and I will say 90% of the time, if not more, I am airdropping something with a family member or a friend, or even if
Right.
it's a colleague, it's somebody that's in my contacts. And so then everything works sort of like magic. It just, you send it, they see it, they say, do you want it? You get it. Good. What Glenn's talking about was years and years ago, there were all of these scams that people would be using AirDrop as a way to try to send you something without you even wanting it. Some people were trying to send obnoxious and, pictures themselves of, in an undressed state or something like that. But so Apple added all these security features. And so the current version of it, this is with iOS 26, is they have these codes. And so the way that it works is if somebody tries to airdrop something to you, and if y'all are not in each other's contacts, then you're going to
Yeah.
get this airdrop code. And basically it's you need to type in this number. It's not unlike if you hook up your iPhone to an Apple TV for the first time, it's going to say
Right.
display the code that's shown on the
Right.
TV to ensure that you're in the same room as the television and you're not in the house next door just going through the wall. And so this is the same way you would say the person, I'm going to share it with you, and then you have to give each other that actual code, and then when you do it, then it will actually work. And I think that as Glenn describes it in here, once you do that code, then you'll be able to continue to airdrop that person for the next 30
Yeah.
days, which is very convenient. So like if you see them at the beginning of a conference, for example, and then the next day you want to share something else with them, you easily do that. You don't have to go through the code dance again. But it is one of the things that Apple tries to make it super simple, but there's often that, simplicity versus privacy and security. And so
Right.
Apple's trying to get that middle ground. And as Glenn concludes in this article, they do a pretty good job of making it as seamless as possible while still having some security. But I do think it's worth it looking at this article, just to remind yourself on how this works. In fact, if
Yes.
you know that
Agreed.
now that we're in the brand new year, where you and I were just talking before we started recording about upcoming conferences and stuff. If you're going into a conference, a CLE, a
Right.
meeting, or, I'm going to be in an environment where I might be sharing things via AirDrop, take a quick look at this article just to remind yourself of, okay, no, if they are in my contacts, great. If they're not, here's how the codes work. It's a nice refresher because again, this all changed. This changed last fall.
Right.
So it's a good it is theoretically possible that you haven't even airdropped with somebody since this all changed in iOS 26. So take a look at this article to see how this all
Well,
works.
regardless if you're going to use this or not, it's worth going into the settings and making sure that the settings are correct. Because I remember when AirDrop first came out, I think that the options were anyone. You could AirDrop with anyone, or you could set it to just contacts. And so to back up just a little bit, if you go into your settings, go to general, you'll see AirDrop there. And now there's three options in here, Jeff, that you can say receiving off. Like you can just turn it off all the way. If you never want to do AirDrop, just go ahead and turn it off if you want the best security. The second option is contacts only, meaning that you will only be able to AirDrop back and forth or receive an AirDrop from somebody that is actually in your contacts. You mentioned that. The third option is everyone for 10 minutes. And this is what Glenn talks about in here, that basically
you got to turn that on first, right?
That's right. You have to go in and turn that, because I have contacts only. So it's just what you were saying. If it's going to be a family member, they're already in my contacts. And so if they want to airdrop something, there's no friction there, right? It usually just goes through smooth, just because we trust each other and the contacts are there. But if you now want to get it from somebody that may not be in your contacts, you got to go into the settings, go to general, go to AirDrop, and say everyone for 10 minutes. Basically, that opens that hole for 10 minutes. But now, instead of it just being a completely open hole, this is where it requires that code to basically, do that handshake between the two devices before it'll actually allow the AirDrop on there. So my suggestion, on top of what Glenn is talking about here, just make sure you go into settings, general, AirDrop, and make sure you either have receiving off if you don't want it on, or contacts only, just so that it's for the contacts. Because I'm confident that Apple has locked it down enough that you're not going to get some kind of nefarious AirDrop. I mean, we used to see some of that, to your point you made earlier, Jeff. It's possible it can happen, but I just like to have contacts on contacts only, just so that I know if somebody tries to nefariously, surreptitiously try to airdrop something to me, it's gonna turn it away.
Yeah, and you say that as if it's something that you set, and perhaps you did, Brett, but I actually think it's like that for everybody
It's probably
because
default now. Yeah.
yeah, that's the default. When you switch it to that mode that I'm going to do, the wide world, everybody in the world for the next 10 minutes, you stay in that mode for 10 minutes, and then when you're done, you go back to that
Yeah.
contacts only
Right.
mode. So now
Exactly.
you can have AirDrop completely turned off if you have a loved one's phone that you know that they're never going to AirDrop. Just go ahead and turn it off. They
Right.
never have to worry about it.
Good point.
But anyway, no, it's simple, but it's not 100% simple. There is some complexity to it. So again, worth understanding.
If you traveled over the holidays and you were using apps from United or Delta or even Southwest, you may have seen something a little bit new on your home screen. I got to tell you, I started seeing this in about the middle of November. The couple of trips that I made November and December, Jeff, I was flying United. And typically, I also use the Flighty app, right? Now, the Flighty app is great because it will track my flight and then it'll do a live activity on my lock screen and I can follow it along. And that's great. I love that. But now I noticed on a couple of flights that I did, the United app also had live activities. It had some limited live activities before, but now it looks a whole lot more informational now. It almost looks very similar to Flighty, almost to the point where I'm running out of screen space because there's so many live activities that are tracking everything. But now the United app, for me, when I did these trips, would give some additional information. In fact, instead of, how your boarding pass, if you put it in the Apple Wallet, it just has that little thin little mention at the bottom of your lock screen. You could tap on it and go to your boarding pass. Well, now it's much bigger if you use this and if the flight supports it. Not every flight supported it for me when I was taking United, but Delta now has this, and Southwest. This is the story that you linked to today. And now, instead of it just being that little thin strip to say United boarding pass or something, it'll be a much bigger one. This is the screenshot that it looks like in here. And it gives you a lot more information. The arrival gate, your bag claim, 30 minutes, a lot more information that normally you'd have to go into the boarding pass to see. But now it's a live activity on the lock screen. And I say, bring it on. This is great.
Yeah, this is one of the big reasons that I love and pay for the Flighty app. I guess if the feature becomes good enough, I might not need the Flighty app, although I'm sure Flighty app will continue to have some advantages. I haven't yet flown on an airplane that has it, but most of the time when I fly, it's either Delta or Southwest, and so I'm glad that Southwest has now added this feature. I look forward to trying it out, and again, having airline tickets in your wallet is so incredibly useful.
Oh,
and
yeah.
has been for years, that I love that Apple is making it even better. And now it's got, at least here in the United States, some of the big carriers using it. So that's great.
And this is the other thing, by the way. Now the boarding pass in your Apple Wallet, do you see? Normally it was just the boarding pass and there was nothing else around it. But if you look down here, I saw this on the boarding pass in the Apple Wallet. You can share flight tracker. Again, a great feature in Flighty. Because you're right. I started thinking about this. Is like, now the feature set is there's not much of a gap in here. You can track your luggage, which is great because we talked about the air tags. If you have an air tag in your luggage, not only can you track it individually, but you can share that location now with some of the airlines. So anyway, it's just really cool. And I am always excited when there's new features that are jumping into the Apple Wallet. So that's great.
Very cool.
Also, 'tis the season. If you got your New Year's resolutions revving up, especially on the fitness side. Interesting little article you linked to today from MacRumors. Apple is teasing, quote, something big coming soon to Apple Fitness Plus. And it was a cute little video that they provided alongside this today.
Not many times that Apple will tell you they're about to come out with something. I mean, we know when there's iPhone announcements, and WWDC is the big conference every summer where they announce things. But otherwise, it's pretty rare. I mean, usually Apple just says, now here's something is available. And so whenever Apple says we're about to do something, it always sort of makes me sit on the edge of my chair. Like, okay,
our ears
Apple
perk
decided
up.
that this is, and it makes perfect sense. If this is something that has something to do with the Fitness Plus service, which I love and use all the time, and Apple, it would certainly make sense for some improvements to come in January, because we all know January every year, whether it's because you want to start, working off the pounds from the holidays, or just, start the new year fresh and, being more healthy and stuff. Literally this morning, one of my colleagues at my law firm reached out to me saying, I think I'm finally going to get an Apple Watch. I wanted to, for the health tracking features, everybody is thinking about this now. So it would make perfect sense for Apple to do something interesting with Fitness Plus. They're going to do something because they've told us they're going to do something. What will it be? I do not know. Maybe it will be something small, so I shouldn't get my hopes up too much. The big one that I hope on, as I mentioned in my post today, was I really want Apple to take the data that they get from my Apple Watch and do more with it. Apple has some limited things they do now, like sleep tracking. I'll tell you, over the holidays, Brett, I was I was on vacation, and so I was at the beach, and the place that we were staying had a really nice fitness room. And so instead of using just the treadmill that's at my house, I was using like one of these really, these nice treadmills that are like, huge. It's got all the fancy stuff, and I was like, "Ooh, this is really nice. I feel like I can do even more in this thing." But aside from the fancy treadmill, I was enjoying the experience because of this Workout Buddy feature that Apple added last fall, where as I'm working out, I have the digital version of a Fitness Plus trainer in my ear, and she's telling me things like, Jeff, you just walked, I don't even know, X number of miles this year in 2025. I'm like, that sounds like a lot of miles I walked. And they're silly little things, but they're encouraging, and I like it, and I feel I like it helps. And so this was something that Apple brought to Fitness Plus a couple of months ago. I would love to have even more. I would love Apple to say, based upon the data we have from your watch and your phone and everything else, here's some other information that we're figuring out. I think I linked today that there was some big MIT study that came out recently that said that you can correlate things and make predictions about people's health. So maybe I'm hoping for too much, but maybe it's just going to be that they're adding a new workout type. But something is going to happen to Fitness Plus this month. And you would think if they're going to do it this month, they should do it like soon, like next week, right? Why wait till the end of January? So keep posted. We're going to be seeing something new with Apple Fitness Plus very soon.
Apple posted this cute little video of some of the trainers on Instagram with newspapers talking about something big. And the only thing that I could focus on is like, why are you using old-fashioned paper? Like, couldn't that have been like an iPad or something that you could have put in there instead? But it's still cool. Speaking of cute videos from Apple, I love these little videos from MacRumors. I even looked up the song just because I was like getting so intense with the little song that was following this. Julie Clover posted these. Apple shares new quitting Apple Watch ads, and I got to tell you, I related to all three of these, and I loved them, and I'm going to think about them, and I can download the song so that when I'm running, I can now listen to this song and think about, I don't want to quit quitting.
They're funny ads. The shtick of them is that the person's running and they're being followed by their bed because, come on back to bed. Wouldn't that be nice?
Right.
Or their nice big comfy chair,
or the lazy boy, right?
Or the lazy boy, or the bar stool, or whatever.
The bar stool is my favorite, I have to say. I like them all, but the bar stool, like hopping around like on a pogo stick, that was cute.
They're cute. You gotta watch them. It's a good message. Like, okay, let's start the year on the right foot. Let's get out there. Let's be active. Let's. So I think they're funny too.
Last little video that you linked to was the Crash Zoom Detectives. And at first I was watching this and I'm like, okay, well, this is cute. And then it struck me like the second time that the Zoom actually happens, I'm like, oh yes. And mostly because it spoke to me, because my kids get upset when I'm filming them in something, and sure enough, I'll zoom in like really quickly to them in a video and they're like, Dad, I'm gonna get sick. But anyway, this is a cute little video, the Crash Zoom Detectives for the iPhone 17 Pro.
It is cute. It's a lot of fun. And like you, I didn't get it at first, and then I'm like, oh, I see what they're doing here. That's cute. I like it.
Gotta watch it, always with the little video at the end. In the know. All right, so you may not be able to tell from my background the 80s motif, like a Tron video motif on here, but over the holidays, for various family reasons, my wife, my daughter, and I binged the entire 5 seasons of Stranger Things. And I gotta say, there's a lot of hours of Stranger Things, but it's been out. You and I were just talking about this just a little bit before. I mean, I think the first season was 2016, right?
Is that right? I don't even know. Yeah,
I believe it was that. You can look it up and see, but it's just been fun watching the characters developed through all these years. COVID hit in the middle of it, and my daughter was explaining about how they had to change because they're trying to look like they look in high school, but you can tell they're not in high school in real life anymore, that kind of a thing. Okay, so anyway, that's the backdrop of this tip that I wanted to share today. If you're watching a video through the Apple TV, now certain services will give you this tip and some will not. But this, of course, as you might know, Stranger Things is on Netflix, but we're watching it through the Apple TV, right? So we bring up Netflix. Now, some of the episodes in Stranger Things are longer than others. And as I said, we binge watched all 5 seasons over the weekend. And so there were times where we needed to see okay, how much longer do we have in this episode before we can get up and go to the bathroom or go get a snack to eat or something like that. And so if you're watching on the Apple TV, as you know, you can have your Apple TV remote. And if you tap the TV remote in the little center button, right, it will show you the little scrubber line, the playhead right at the
Across
bottom. It'll tell you. So if it's an hour-long video and you've watched 15 minutes, it'll tell you that you've got 45 minutes left, right? And along those lines. Now, people do that all the time, and you can calculate yourself if you want to what time that's going to be over. But if you're like me and a little too lazy, if you tap the remote once, it brings up how much time is left. But if you tap it again, instead of showing you 45 minutes left, it'll tell you the exact precise time that it'll be over. So if it's going to be 11:06, it'll change from 45 minutes to 11:06. Now, I didn't recognize this. I'm going to give full credit to my daughter because she was showing this and we were looking at it. I'm like, hey, wait a minute. How did you get that time to switch there at the end? That's not the time remaining. That's the exact time when the show is going to be over, 12:11 or 1:03. And I just thought that was really cool. And if you didn't know about this, I didn't. It looks like you might have known about this already, but I didn't know about this. And it was just a cool little hidden tip that I just thought was really cool on there. Okay,
it is really cool.
Yeah, here's a tip.
Oh, that's a good
Here's
example,
a little screenshot. There's 16:52, but if you don't want to calculate what time that's going to be, you can tap it again and it'll tell you the exact time that it's going to end. So in this case, it was 1:29 p.m. And it just was very helpful. As we watched the rest of these seasons and Stranger Things, we were able to time things out for bathroom breaks and snack breaks as well. And it was just great.
Yeah, I mean, when you're binging TV like that, and maybe you've got your bagel bites in the oven or something like that,
right,
and they're going to be ready to they're going to be ready at 12:30
for the
Let's
80s.
see when this is going to be ready. This will also be finished at 12:30. Excellent. That will work out the timing great. So
now, it doesn't work for everything.
Feature.
It's not for YouTube, for example, it won't work on YouTube. But if you're watching something from Netflix or Apple, anything from Apple TV plus, Excel, that chip will work. And, it's just fun to use this Apple TV remote. I got to tell you, we've used many, many remotes over our many years, Jeff, but the Apple TV remote just continues for me there's little hidden things you can do with different tips and different buttons. And this was another one that I thought was cool.
That is a great tip. Hey, and by the way, I'll also say that Stranger Things is a good tip too, because my son and I literally just last night watched the last episode. And
oh my goodness.
Fun. I love that no spoilers, of course, but I love that the series ends. For me, it was a satisfying way. They explained things.
Yes.
They gave you the little, it was everything that you would want for a good series ending, and I totally enjoyed it.
Wholeheartedly.
Plus, I love the fact that my son and I got to watch something that took place in the 1980s when I was basically his age.
Yes.
And that was so fun. All the 80s references are fantastic.
I just quickly, I will say, because of the way, if you've watched Stranger Things, they could have done some very disappointing endings on the show. Something could have happened, something could have come back, but I thought that they wrapped everything up. I was expecting the end of Lost kind of a ending, right? Which would have just infuriated me, but they did a very good job. So thank you for saying that, because it was good. Well worth it.
My tip for today is something that I have referenced in the past. I think it's been a past tip, but it came up for me recently because unfortunately, in fact, I'll give a little behind the scenes stories. Listeners to this podcast don't know this, but you and I were recording an episode of this podcast the day after Thanksgiving, and we were literally 5 minutes into the podcast, and I got the news that my father, who had been sick, had passed away, and I had to
Yeah.
say, Brett, like let's cut the podcast. I jumped away. It was a sad thing. I will say that over the last month, because I'm the executive of his estate, I've been, doing all the things that you do to put together their life. And since both of my
Right.
parents are gone now, it's, financial things and mortgages and cars and all this sort of stuff and
Right.
digital things and emails and following up with people. And it's a lot. And believe me, I'm happy to do it. But I'm glad that there were many things that I asked him about while he was alive. But
Hmm.
now, inevitably, you always say, oh gosh, I wish I could just go back and ask one or two more questions. And so
Right.
that's why when I saw
Right.
this article this week on the Mac Observer that was talking about accessing someone's iPhone passwords and stuff after the death, I'm like, well, this is a timely article for me, because as I have been trying to recreate pieces of my father's life to try to get all of the affairs in order, it has been really useful for me to have his iPhone, because it means that as I'm logging into services and I have no idea what his password is, but you reset it,
Yeah.
they send you the reset code to his text message, right? And so thank
Right.
goodness,
Right.
because I know his iPhone passcode, I can then get the text message and I can get into his email and I can find out, oh, okay, this is the insurance agent he was dealing with, or whatever it is, all those things that, some of them I did ask about and some of them I did not, but having is good. And it also reminds me, and this one I know we had as a tip as before, but it's timely, especially, hey, beginning of the new year, we're trying to, start things out right in so many different
Right.
ways. Password, if you use a password manager, many of us that are listening to this podcast probably
Yes.
do. You and I use one password, then that so much of your important information is in that password manager. And so the
Yeah.
key is, should you pass away or should a loved one that uses a password manager pass away, you want to be able to get access to that. And one password has a built-in feature. I'm sure the other password managers do. They have I gave you a link to an article on preparing for your digital estate, that they have all these fantastic tips of all
Yeah.
these things that you can do. But one of the things that they have is like an emergency kit. And I know that I have this for me, although now that I've read this,
Yep.
I should go back and double check it. There, you can basically create something that's printed out, that's got like your super secret password in it, and
Yeah.
then seal that up, put it in an envelope, put it in a lockbox, put it somewhere safe. The point is just to tell your loved ones, whether it's your spouse or your kids or whoever it is in your life, should anything happen to me, go here and you'll get access, and like, here's everything you need to know. And of course, at the best world, it would not just be your one password. It would also be, here's the password for my email, here's the key things that I pay every month that need to be,
Right.
here's all the stuff, just to make things easier for people. Not all of this is digital, some of this is analog type things, but it's just always a nice idea. And just as someone who's going through it right now, on the one hand, I am happy that I have a lot of the things that I do have for my father, and on the other hand, I of course wish I had more, and that's inevitable. It's it's impossible that
Of
you would already
course.
have always have everything.
Right.
So it's a good time to just be thinking about these things, whether it's yourself or, for my parents, neither one of my parents were going to ever use a password manager. That was just not going to happen.
Right.
And so for them, I'm not getting my one password digital emergency kit, but it's instead just making sure that I understand what services you use, what accounts do you have.
Yeah.
If somebody is on something like Facebook has a feature that you can do. I forget the word they use. It's basically an archive. It's basically, you're designating it as, this is no longer an active person using the Facebook account, and
Right.
instead it's a memorial account. So people could still post things if they want to post something about the loved one, but you don't have to worry about a hacker gaining access to their Facebook. Because I mean, what would be more distasteful? And I've seen it happen before, that someone passes away and the next thing you know, you start getting friends requests from that person as if it's
Right.
behind the grave, and it's not really them, it's a hacker that got access to their account because they had an easy password to hack or something like that. So anyway, it's a good time to think about all of this stuff, and it's so much easier to think about this stuff now while people are around, whether it's you or your loved ones.
Right.
And then should the day come, it gives you the solace of knowing that you've made things easier for them, or if they are the ones that pass away, I'm sure that they would appreciate the fact that they made things easier for you. So not, I don't mean
Yeah.
to end it on an unhappy note, because let's think about it from a positive way. We can do something nice even when we're no longer on this planet by making
Absolutely.
things easier for people. So that's my tip.
I was just trying to remember, Jeff. There is something that Apple offers that's similar, and I can't remember what they call it. Right? You can designate a
Yeah.
contact. It's
Hmm.
like I don't know. They don't there's a medical contact. Maybe it's an emergency contact. I'm trying to
Mhm.
remember what they say, but I guess you could do that probably within iCloud or something along those lines. And that is important. I wish you could find it. Maybe you can find it, because I was just going to just confirm this. Like, my father actually passed away in 2021, a few years ago now, but Jeff, this was absolutely invaluable. Even before then, a few years before, when he was starting to get sick, we did the exact same thing. I started saying to my dad, like, I need to know the passcode. I didn't not think I was using it all the time, but I actually put
Mhm.
everything into one password, similar to what you were just saying. He had a Verizon account, and I needed to put my name on the Verizon account. So we called and did that together. But then I kept a copy, in one password of his login information. I mean, there's just so many things like that that you probably don't think of, and understandably so. You're not going to be thinking about that in the time of emergency, that anything happens like this. But having all of this information is just so incredibly helpful, and a comfort almost, in a way. And I mean that in the sense of, like, you don't have to worry about that right now. You don't have to go and ask too many questions like that. But I did have my dad's old phone, for example, and I did exactly what you said. I had to get access to certain access codes that they would text after, so that I could log into an account and switch things over, in my case, to my mother's name, for
Mhm.
example, or something along those lines. So I know it's a little bit of work, um, but it's just so worthwhile. And this is a great article too that you linked to, that you sent me, that I'll put in the show notes, from 1Password. Digital estate planning, just having some basic options there and putting that out. Even 1Password has like an emergency kit on there as well, right? So that you can print that out, so that you can get access to it if you need to. My dad never used 1Password, but I sure had all of his information in my 1Password, so that I could access it that
Mhm.
way too.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing for mine as well. The feature that you were thinking about is called Legacy Contact, and we have made
Legacy
that a tip.
contact.
We have
Good.
made that a tip of the
We
week in the
have.
past. And
Yes.
again, it's the same thing. My dad did not make me a Legacy Contact. You don't need to use that feature if someone just gives you your iPhone and you have their password and stuff like that. Then you can just
Correct.
basically, sort of get around it. But Legacy Contact is a more appropriate way to do it, because that way you wouldn't actually necessarily need it. It basically gives someone else the right to get into it. And I forget the way that Apple does it. I think that if someone passes away,
Yeah,
you send Apple a copy of the death certificate, and then they turn it
that's
on, or
right.
however it works.
That's right.
But for anyone that's a more sophisticated digital user, this is clearly the feature to use. My wife and I both have it for each other, just
Same.
in case something
Yep.
ever happens. So yeah, this is
Well, with
this is
my
the more
wife.
advanced way to do it. But
But I tell people, I wanted to bring this up just because, I can imagine in some cases, if your parents or grandparents are not, ill right now, and they don't want to
Mhm.
give you access to their phone passcode or something like that,
Yeah,
at
yeah, yeah,
least
yeah, yeah.
having this and setting up the legacy contact now could be something, at least, so that you don't have access to everything, but at least it's there as a just in case. And, it would take maybe 10-15 minutes to set this up as a legacy contact, and it would be worthwhile, because definitely it can help you if you're contacting Apple to get access to some of those services that way too, or to reset some things if the
Mhm.
unfortunate happens, if the tragedy happens, of course.
Totally. Yep.
Good stuff. Well, thanks as always, Jeff. Happy New Year 2026. Boy, we're
Indeed.
starting off with a bang. I like this. Good stuff to look forward to already in 2026. Good to look back on 2025 and all the things that we saw Apple do and they got rid of as well in 2025. And I don't know, I'm pretty excited about 2026. So excited that we'll talk with you next week, Jeff.
There you go. Thanks, Brett. Happy New Year, everybody.